Yeah, we're live now. Here we go. So, for everybody joining today, this is a big one for me. Chris has been a big influence for me for a very long time. His credit list is way too long to list, but I'll list a few here. Kelly Clarkson, Carrie Underwood, Amy Grant, Brooks and Dunn, Keith Urban, Rascal Flatts, and for those Canadians, watching Doc Walker from my home province, which
That's
is
right.
pretty cool.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
thanks for joining, Chris. Thanks for
Yeah,
hanging out
man.
for a bit.
Yeah. Thanks
We
for
were just
having me.
we were talking a little bit before going live about the state of things in the world, and maybe we won't really get into politics or anything too dark.
Yeah.
Hopefully,
Well, I think yeah, I mean, it's not worth talking about if there's no hope in there, and that's really the deal. I think you have to look for some kind of hope in the midst of all of this because um it's easy to isolate, and certainly we're required to at this point, and depending
yeah,
upon where you're living. And I think the combination of that and just the state of the world is, I do think there's a lot of people that are suffering, from just from anxiety and certainly depression. But point is, um, I think this is the time to kind of look for hope wherever you can, and it and to really to do something. That's the thing. If there's anything you can do for anybody, this is the time to do it more than ever. And
for sure.
for me, that's certainly the thing that keeps hope alive. Because it's a very easy thing to pick up the phone and call somebody that you haven't talked to in a long time, or anybody that that's just having a difficult time, just to kind of call and lend an ear. And so
Absolutely,
that's my take
absolutely.
on the political thing, Van, is like just how can we as individuals do something for each other, and then maybe that'll help out, in the bigger picture. I don't know, but
For sure. Yeah. I
yeah,
mean, just what we were talking about before we got started too is, I started this thing as a way for a few drummers around here to kind of chat about stuff that were happening, whether it's like mental health issues or physical health issues and things like that. And I wondered, I mean, we, we kind of tend to put certain people up on a pedestal. And I think, especially for me, you're one of those people. You kind of ended up as a huge influence and things like that. But we don't often think about you guys and your day-to-day lives because we see you on stage and
right.
on the screen and stuff. So like what kind of things have you been going through mentally and physically the last
Oh
while?
man, well, shoot, mentally, it's well, I would say, man, to be brutally honest, a lot of my life I've struggled with just depression, uh, and then you know I've gone through a couple difficult life things that uh, had forced me to become self-aware, and I say force because you know the choice was, do I want to continue living the way that I'm living,
Right.
and in a mental health capacity, for me, a big part of that had to do with getting sober, quite honestly, and then learning how to live in sobriety.
Right.
And so as far as mental health is concerned, what has benefited me is going to see a therapist, and just kind of honestly looking at myself, and the changes that I can make for me. And what have found interesting is that it I was actually in a good place of like, you know just kind of peace, if you will. And um, and then when the pandemic hit, um, it's been nice. I think had I not done some of the work that I've done, I wouldn't be prepared for what's going on now. Granted, I still have mornings where I wake up and go, I cannot believe all this crap is still happening. But
Yeah.
uh, have a better, I have a set of tools now, and but I would say what hits me emotionally, what I find difficult is a lot of my friends that are mainly in the live part of music that are just, they're not working.
Right.
I have a few friends who fortunately work for more higher level artists that have been able to afford to keep them on and do like a reduced salary during this.
Okay.
But most people that I know that are like in the live industry are just, they're not working, and um, they're trying, they're basically hobbling together an income
Right.
in the midst of this, um, and that's a difficult thing. I had dinner with a friend who um, is more in the production side of live music last week, and this whole thing has made him just look at um, uh, just his whole career, and is this what he really wants to do anyway? Because what is interesting about live is, you know, when you're touring and it one day just kind of rolls into the other, and you're very busy, and
Hmm.
you know, it there's a lot of it's kind of distracting in a way. There's not a lot of time to, soul search per se. Because this is somebody who's more on the production side. So this is one of these guys that has more of like the 15-hour day, you
Okay.
know. Yeah,
Yeah.
gets up, does load in, is
Yeah.
up all day, does the show, packs up, and then climbs back in his bunk. And but he's been, what he's been looking at is just this is kind of giving him a chance to figure out what his path is going to be in his life, and he's changing some things, and you know, um, so I guess, that's the deal with all of this, is we've all got to just re-examine and you know figure out where how we make a living,
Hmm.
and the stability of that, and you know and again, I'm going to preface all of this with, a lot of these perspectives that I have, they're not necessarily, they're always going to be my perspective, and I don't have a full perspective on what things are like for everyone, if you will, like,
Right.
so some of these things, it's like, well, that's easy for me to say, that, because some people have completely lost their livelihoods,
Yeah.
and so with all due respect to that, um, I have sensitivity towards that. Um, but again, I'm not in that position, so I don't want to pretend that I know what that's like for what people are going through. Yeah, I've been broke in my life before, but um, that's not the same as what's going on now. This has been
Yeah.
going on quite a while, and so anyway, I hope that answers your question.
Yeah, totally. I mean, just kind of getting a feel for what people at your level kind of go through, and I
Well, yeah, I
kind of
mean,
sorry, go ahead.
it's pretty normal. And the thing I would say, overall, you really never get to a place of where, um, you know, you are self-doubting and
Hmm.
everything I play is amazing, or any of that kind of stuff.
Right.
That never goes away. I literally go through weeks where I'm just like, I hate everything I play. And it doesn't matter what anyone says.
Yeah.
Um, I mean, you do have to play to where the client is happy, but after that, um, when it's in the zone of, did I like what I did, um, it's always that you're your own worst critic. That I don't think that ever goes away.
Right.
And if anything, it's a good motivator to re-examine technique and just kind of overall looking for inspiration.
Right.
That's the good thing about it, is that it's like, well, if I've kind of tapped the limits of what I can come up with imagination wise, it's time to, you know, just snoop around on the internet and see what's going on, and so maybe that's a good thing about that, as a motivator.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, let's talk about that a little bit, because I've
Yeah,
been kind of following people that have been studying with Dave Elich a little bit, and you've
yeah,
taken some lessons with Dave,
yeah.
and I'm curious as to what you're working on with him.
Well, Dave's great. I actually just, I kind of wind up texting with him at the least, every couple days or so.
Yeah.
He's a big snare drum collector as well as I am. And
Right.
so, we kind of nerd out on stuff. You know, the main thing with that I'm still working on is just foot technique. And you know, and it's an ongoing process. I'm, basically relearning how to play more from the hip as opposed to the calf, if you will.
Right.
Like I've been someone that is, ball of the foot up, and kind of
Yeah.
like that buried beater, and just retraining from that, and that'll probably be lifelong,
For
because
sure.
typically I'm in the situation where I'm recording, and if I don't feel confident about the technique that I'm using, I'm going to go back to my old one, which
Right.
which is okay. This is just a way to kind of save myself from injury and to play more physically efficient is what it's really about. The other thing with Dave is just getting more bounce out of the stick,
Right.
and to let the stick vibrate. I did notice a big shift in my tone, to me, when I
Okay.
started to use some of these techniques with Dave that David taught me, and so that's in everything. Everything. I do that every day, basically, when I'm playing.
Okay.
And I've had some good progress in that, where I find it is the most, you know, where it comes up in my playing most is more of like hi-hat work. And
Okay. Yeah.
yeah, and variance in tone and hi-hat, um, and just some fluidity there that I felt like I was missing. Um, and again, like, just letting, it's funny, even with hi-hat, just letting it speak a bit more. Um, and there's a really good clip of Dave from, I'm trying to think what year, PASIC. Um,
Oh, yeah. I think I know
him,
which video you're talking about.
him explaining the bounce, for anybody who's curious.
Right.
Um, that's what we're talking about. And so those are the two main things that I work on every day,
Okay.
and just kind of centering and balancing inside of the kit, position of elbows, you know, and what I'm looking for is fluidity. Um, and then, as I get older, just to prevent injury.
Right.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
that's what I work on with him. But it's funny, man, with Dave, we spend more time talking about just kind of we talk a lot about just emotional health, and
Right.
but that's just as friend stuff. We
Okay.
we exchange books and different things, and we've gone through some similar things in life, and so that's been beneficial for me, him as a friend as well. You know, it's not just the teacher student part,
Cool. That's
but
awesome.
and it's kind of funny, you know, calling a guy a teacher who's 20 years younger than I am, but you know.
Well, he's
Yeah.
got his stuff together, man. I've checked out his video series, and it's pretty cool.
Yeah. He
Hell,
yeah, there's it was interesting, you know, I first met him, I think at that very same PASIC, you know, and I kind of instantly knew, it's like, man, if I ever took the time to uh, just redo my technique, this would be the guy.
right.
Um, and so that's really the deal, you know. I had gone through the separation and divorce, and sort of took that time. I went out to LA and worked with Dave there, and so it's really been a good thing. And that's the other thing too. You know, I don't think a lot of people understand it. Like, as far as achieving a goal or getting to a level of you know, being a musician for hire, if you have aspirations to be a session player or to play live and to do sessions, you know, the players that I admire are the ones that continue to work on their craft always.
Right.
You know, because it's not like, you know, what I do and what players like me do. Um, you know, Matt Chamberlain and Shannon Forrest and Jerry Rowe and Rich Redmond.
Hmm.
You're, for the most part, like with Rich, I'll use him as an example. Is he has a particular way that he plays with Jason. It's more
Okay.
of a, obviously, you know, rock oriented feel,
Yep.
rock oriented playing. But if you look further into Rich, he can play anything. And the reason why he can play anything is that he works on that stuff. And
Right.
so to bring it back into the world of, say, like, you know, me or Shannon or Jerry or Matt, um, it's not like we're in a band and we just sound the way that we sound. You know, yeah, you can tell, you know, us apart, but for the most part, in terms of the music, we're constantly adjusting what we're doing, and
Right.
that could be something as big as, you know, a different kit setup for particular artists, or something as small as you know, just velocity and the way that you're going to play behind a particular song.
Okay.
You know, it you know, I can't use the same um, you know, headspace like if I was playing on something that was more rocking, and then I'm going to go and play more of a um, you know, like a female pop artist. It's a completely different thing. And then also the difference between whether or not I'm going to be playing in like a four-piece situation, which would be necessarily, that would be more of a rock thing. There's sort of less players on the floor and there's
Okay.
less things happening.
Yep.
And then going to play on something pop where, you know, there's a lot of programming. Um, there's keys, there's multiple guitars, you know, there's live bass and synth bass at the same time. And
Right.
so, you know, you have to really adjust uh, what you play and what your tones are like. You know, those are generally, you know, just as an overview, I want to get the kit much more smaller and with a lot of attack and not real long sounds. You know, more punch.
Okay.
So
Yeah.
it's easier to sit in with the you know, with the programming.
That makes sense.
Yeah,
Yeah. So can we can talk more about that too? Because
yeah,
one of my questions was had to do with your relationship with Harry McCarthy at
yeah.
Norman's Paradise, right?
Hmm.
You guys have been working together for years and
Yeah.
years and years. Um, so you know, I guess two scenarios. You're out on the road with, say, Keith and
Hmm.
you know Harry's teching, and your drum sounds for live versus how you work with him in a studio situation, and what kind of dialogue there is there when you're, whether it's him or somebody at Drummers Paradise setting your stuff up for you. What's the dialogue like?
Okay, so back when I was on the road with Keith and Harry's my tech, we have a certain headspace of what we're going for tonality wise,
Okay.
and then there's the dialogue that he has with the front of house mixer.
Okay.
So his job is actually a bit more. It's tedious in the sense of he's got to make the both of us happy. But once you kind of lock into that, it stays the same. It's not a big variance from day to day. You just kind of, but it takes, there's like an initial, so say, I start a tour and I'm using a different set of drums, and the front of house engineer is dealing with a much bigger picture than what we are up on stage, because we're just focused on the drums, but he's got to make everything fit out front.
Right.
So, during pre-production rehearsal, there's a lot of that give and take going on. And then we sort of, before the tour even starts, we're kind of settled on tones for that.
Okay.
And I rely on Harry's expertise of having done that for years and years, and with a wide variety of players.
Right.
So, he's got 100 different ways to solve any kind of problem. And then as far as the solution has to do, it's kind of like, as a player, if I do this kind of tuning or muffling, are you going to be comfortable when you play?
Right.
And so that's when you get into, okay, well, that's not going to work. Well, we could try this head, and we could try this kind of muffling and see what you think of that.
Okay.
And so that's where his expertise comes in. And as far as the studio is concerned, in that scenario, Harry or any of the other people that are working at Drum Paradise, it's more about kind of getting they sort of they kind of get the gist of how I'm having things tuned, and they just sort of leave them that way. It's more of a just kind of keeping things maintained. But like with Trevor, who's working there, I can have heads changed, and when I go sit down to play, they're in the relative tuning space that I like anyway.
Okay.
So, and then there's all kinds of things that come in, like, I mean, I usually carry about 25 snare drums per session. And so they're just maintaining all of that, keeping fresh heads on it. And then also hardware and just keeping up with all of that. And then suggestions on, those guys will suggest, hey, this new head has come out. This might be something you may want to try. Those kinds of things. And so it makes a big difference for me, my just my level of confidence knowing that those guys are taking care of my gear chain, when I'm walking in to a live or a studio session. We've had so much dialogue before anything even happens. And then continued dialogue,
Right.
that I know exactly what the state of the kit's in. But still, like, I don't know, a lot of people know this or not, but for me as a session player, I still get there, an hour, 45 minutes or an hour before the session even starts. And that's to get sounds, and that's also just to get kind of familiar with the room, and
Okay.
just make sure everything is just comfortable.
Cool.
Often those guys, somebody from Drum Paradise will be there when I get there, but sometimes not.
Okay.
So, but yeah, it's kind of it's a really great service to have. That's for sure.
No kidding.
And most of us, here in Nashville are with them.
Right.
I don't really know anybody who isn't, quite honestly.
Yeah, they seem to be the hot
Yeah.
hot couple to be with for sure. I see photos of their warehouse and Steve Gadd's
Yeah.
drums and your drums and Aronoff, and seems okay. Seems
Yeah.
all right.
It's a really cool thing. If anybody gets to come to Nashville once restrictions are different,
Hmm.
I would recommend getting a tour of that place for sure.
Awesome. I've been talking to Harry last year. I think I picked up one of those Beyer 15x4 snare drums, and I was emailing him about tuning, particularly about Seth's tuning, which I think I got to get into it next week with him. But he's just like, yeah, come by if you're in Nashville. I'll just show you. It's
Yeah.
great. That's amazing. Seems
Yeah.
very personable. We got a question from
Yeah.
somebody here. Can you see this on your screen? I don't know
Oh,
if it
my
shows it.
eyes are so bad. Let's see.
So I think it's kind of like what we just talked about a little bit, but
yeah, I got it now.
mhm.
Yeah. So let's see. In terms of articulation and control, I'm pretty close between live and the studio. I generally prefer things to be more open anyway. Not a lot of muffling, and things that would be affected, say the difference between someone like Keith and then playing with like more of a pop situation would be size. So
Okay.
with Keith, I'm using when I was playing live with him was more of a 26 or 24, and in more of a pop situation, I would definitely say nothing bigger than a 22,
Okay.
and probably a 20, just because typically you're dealing with a lot of tracks, and it's easier to focus those smaller kick drums. They take up less space, and they can actually sound bigger than they are. I mean, Phil
Mm-hmm.
Collins, used a 20, and actually for a lot of kind of the mid 80s on stuff that Jeff Porcaro was doing, a lot of that was a 20-inch kick too.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah. So, um, yeah, he had one of those Centennial Carpathian Elm Gretsch kits
Yeah.
with
I've
the
heard a lot
gold.
about that.
Yeah, with the gold hardware. I don't know if it was gold or brass, but
I think it was
yeah,
gold. I think it was.
yeah. But that kit was,
Yeah.
that was his normal, 10, 12, 13, 14 with a 20-inch kick drum. So
Really?
it's crazy, yeah.
Huh.
That thing sounded way bigger than what it was. But
Crazy.
yeah, so I would do that. As far as like say touch, the difference between those artists is it just depends. If it needed to be on the front edge of like where the groove is, or the click, like if it needed to be kind of more dead on, or the energy was where the music was kind of leaning more on the excited side. Like
Hmm.
I would say an extreme example of that would be, am I placing this where Stuart Copeland would place it, or am I placing it more where Steve Gadd would? So those are the two
Okay.
big, you know what I mean?
Yep.
And then say like Dead on the Money would be more like where like Robinson is puts it.
Okay.
So if you think about that, kind of headspace in terms of like touch and tone. um, you know, I would say the more there's going on in the music, like if it's got just more instrumentation, I'm going to go smaller drums, and probably, uh, a mid to high mid tuning, so that stuff can kind of, break through a
Okay.
lot of what's going on. And so,
Hmm.
but um, so size is, to answer the question, size changes live, and then in the studio, it's all really just dependent upon, what the engineer is looking for. Um, you know, so drum sizes at that point could be a big part of it as well. So
Okay.
typically, it would be maybe a bass drum change. You would, um, most of my setups have a 24-inch kick, and then I have a few with 22. So I kind of order ahead of time what I think it's going to be.
Okay.
And so, um, so for me, the headspace is if I know that the artist is leaning, if it's a male or artist, and I know they're more in kind of, say, alt country leaning, I'm going to
Hmm.
go to bigger sizes. I'll typically use 24, and then 12, 14 mounted toms, and 16, 18 floor tom. And then the the snares are always changed. I start each session with, uh, nickel over brass diamond,
Oh,
snare drum. Yeah,
yeah.
the Johnny Adrian, uh, co-venture,
That's
if
pretty
you
pretty nice
will.
drum.
Yeah,
Pretty
I
nice
start with
drum.
that, and
Yeah.
it's got angel hoops on it, and it's a good sort of way just to get tones together, get everything even. Um, and Oh, the other thing that would really change a lot in studio, I change hi-hats a lot.
Okay.
So yeah, like size, going anywhere from 14 to, I think those trash hats I have, those things are 18s, I think, or 16s. Those are really good for kind of loopy stuff.
Okay.
And I do even have, like, I have little child, hi-hats that come with like a kit you would get at
Oh
Toys
yeah.
R Us or
Okay.
something.
Yeah.
And then I have some of those, the Bozio hats. Those are real cool for the real little ones. The little, I can't remember what those were called. Radia, maybe.
Yeah. Maybe.
Um,
Yeah.
those are real small. They're like 6-inch hats.
Okay.
Those are cool to do any kind of loopy thing. And then I have, a lot of 16s, 14s, and 15s, different
Okay.
weights. Just I find that shift, the relationship between kick hat and snare, by changing hats and snare as well, that'll shift. I change, I'll do beater change outs a lot too.
Okay.
Of course, I use my own. I would say about 80% of the time, but
Okay.
um, I have, I have wood ones, I have plastic ones, the DW one. There's um, the I think it's called the KDB2, which is the other innovative beater, which is just a big white.
Oh yeah.
It almost looks like what you would use on a concert bass drum.
Totally.
I use that quite a bit too. Like if I'm doing something with brushes, I'll immediately use that.
Hmm.
It just takes the attack off, and the ability to play real light, and just have the tone as opposed to, the attack part.
Gotcha.
And But it's funny. Part of the challenge is in terms of gear, like even whatever I have delivered to the session, if there's a shift or if I got it wrong, there's sometimes I've just like, oh my gosh, this is a new artist. I completely misread what I thought they were going to sound like. And, but it's getting what you have to do what you need it to do, you know?
Yeah.
And, it's, I mean, quite honestly, you know, having all those snare drums is fine and everything, but the philosophy, I think you can do it with like 4 drums. You could do the whole thing with 4 snare drums, you know?
Right.
You know, and as far as your kit, it's really learning how to tune it and to
Right.
you know, spending more time with you know, front bass drum head is a biggie. That it's pretty shocking what you can change. You know,
Yeah. Do you
what
tend to have yours kind of like on the looser side, or you
man? It just depends. It
changes?
depends.
Yeah.
Yeah, it depends on the room.
Hmm.
Depends on the music.
Yeah.
I generally start with it just above wrinkle,
Okay.
like just when it's, you know, and then overall where there's no wrinkle in it anywhere.
And no
And
dampening inside.
no,
Or
I use dampening, yeah.
okay.
Yeah, and that's been quite a journey in itself through all these years.
Okay.
What I, you know, man, I really like as far as like an out of the box thing. I really like the Dave Weckl Remo system,
Okay.
which uses the little aluminum clips. Yep.
Yeah. Gotcha.
And you know, your batter side is a thicker, longer, uh, you know, tube of. It's basically almost like you rolled a towel up,
Yeah.
and then the resonant side is smaller, and there's different sizes of those.
Okay.
I really like that for a long time, and I find that that's a really great system. But what I've kind of hit into now, which seems to be the favorite now, is using the Dunnet Remo with the felt on the inside. I don't know if
Oh,
you've
yeah.
seen those.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The
So
what, reso
yeah,
tone?
the
Yeah.
Resotone. Yeah,
Yeah.
and then I use the gosh, I've forgotten the name of it. But it's it's basically a pillow,
Okay.
and it's a mass-produced pillow. Um,
Kmart
and
special or something?
no. It's
No.
hang on one second. I'll tell you
Okay.
what it is. Hang on.
Sure.
Okay.
I think I know what you're talking about. Uh
Kick Pat,
Kick
Kick
pad?
Pro, Kick
Kick
Pro.
Pro.
Yeah.
Kick Pro. Okay.
Yep. And so what's crazy about it is that it's got on the bottom.
Oh.
It's like a rubberized kind of material, so it really hugs the bottom of the bass drum. And
Yeah.
then you can turn it, you know, if you want to have more material against the batter side.
Oh.
But I turn mine to where it's the I guess you know, the smaller surface is hitting both heads. So
Okay, just like lengthwise.
yeah,
Okay.
and that's kind of the new thing I'm into, and I really like the any of the Power Stroke stuff that has a big CS dot on the inside.
Okay. You're into that, hey?
Yeah, and that's
Cool.
this week.
Okay.
Yeah,
I'll check with you next week and we'll see where you're
yeah,
at.
yeah.
I think there's a question related to that. Brad asks, you know, coded or clear in studio versus live. Was there a leaning one way or the other?
Uh, it just depends on the kit. So like when I was playing the Concert Tom kit,
Mm-hmm.
the Clear Emperors kind of smoked everything
Okay.
for that application. So that's what I went with there. Um, One of my favorite heads is the Ambassador X
Yeah.
on Tom's.
Really?
Yeah, love
Okay.
that. I always use clear ambassador on the bottoms.
Okay.
And I use ambassador snare side. Sometimes I use the black ebony ones or the hazy ones, but most often it's just the clear clear snare ambassador. And then toms, man, I love clear emperors, and I switch between those and the coated ambassador X quite a bit in the studio.
Okay.
Snare drum wise, it's the CS coated, which is you know, an ambassador with the dot underneath, coated, coated emperors, and then just the clear with the black dot.
Coated
Which
emperors, eh?
yeah, for snare drum.
Yeah.
They're particularly good on metal drums. There's a kind of a frosty quality that they get. What is interesting about, to me, you know, with the CS dot underneath, is there is a point of attack to those heads that I really like, and you know, it's I hate to say it, but there's a dotted quality to it.
Okay.
It's so, yeah, it's terrible,
We'll
but it
quote you
really
on that.
is. It really is. There, the CS dot has a dotted sound, and but yeah. So those are generally, you know, the go-tos. But as far as the difference between live and the studio, uh, for years I used coated heads live, which I love, and I would, you know, without a concert tom kit, I would easily do that. I would probably, if I were to go to do, you know, a live tour now, I would probably use Ambassador X
Oh, really?
coated on the toms. Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, they're really great sounding, and there not many people. Well, I don't know how many people do use them or how common they are, but man, they're great. They're really great tom head, and they're versatile. They muffle up well.
Right.
If you need to do something deader with good, you know, good amount of moon gel on there, they respond to that well.
Okay.
Some heads have a tendency, you know, you moon gel them, and the tone and the dynamic, it kind of flattens out too quick. If that makes
Right.
any sense, it almost gets to where you're like hitting a tabletop.
Yeah.
And really all you're looking is for that head to just be relieved of its overtones, you know.
Yep.
And certain heads won't respond to that. And I find
Right.
that the Ambassador X works really well in
Okay.
that setting. And then as far snare drums, another uh, maybe piece of information that people are not hip to. I use Pure Sound snare wire, um, and I use the orchestral ones.
Really
Yeah, and
interesting.
the 12, there's 12, 14, and 16. They may have stopped making the 12, but
Okay.
I think people would be surprised. A lot of the drums that I have that people think sound very snary only have like 14 strand wires on there. And
Right.
what happens with the orchestral ones is, obviously, you know, in my playing, I use a lot of roughs, you know, uh, in between backbeats, and the orchestral picks up all of that really well. But then when you hit hard, they blow out really nicely. Um,
Right.
and so, because I'm looking for tone, so like, and you guys, you could probably hear this, you know, you know, there's a track out right now by a guy named Riley Green. It's just a
Okay.
country thing. The song's called "Different Round Here," but you
Okay.
can really hear what I'm talking about.
I
It
think
starts,
that sorry, I
yeah,
was going to say I think there's a you play on a Dallas Smith record, another Canadian guy a few years ago.
yeah, that sounds familiar.
I think there's a track called Wasting Gas where it's just like there's a fill off the top, a couple of flams on the snare drum, and it just sounds like that drum is gonna explode. Like it's
exactly. And so that's what I want. I want like you know, one of the things that is not, it's not a really great mystery, but when I'm going in to do a fill,
hmm
I'm literally trying to get the kit to erupt in that setting. So tuning wise, what I want is on any of the heads or drums or anything I'm using, that, you know, when I'm playing kind of at like, let's call it, you know, common velocity, that the kit is even. It's you know, it's even in terms of how bright, what the middle is like, and what the low end is
Mm,
doing. But then when I really lean into it, I want it to be able to respond. I don't want it to get smaller. I,
right.
I want it to kind of like I want it to erupt in the mics, you know.
The whole kit.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
You know what's
Okay.
a, you know what's a good example of this is any of those you know, and sorry for any copyright infringement, but there are a lot of Keith Moon isolated pieces on YouTube.
Okay.
So listen to what happens to his kit when he goes into fills. It
Okay.
literally it sounds like the kit is going to just explode.
Interesting.
Yeah, and that's kind of what I like. That's what I'm looking for. I want you know, that to really stand out. So back to what the orchestral snares do is like inside of themselves, they actually do that as well. So
Okay.
for me, you know, the difference between what my verse velocity and what my chorus velocity is going to be, those snares really help out in that too. Because to me, it picks up on all of that subtlety, you know,
Hmm.
all of those little shifts in terms of what my velocity is.
Okay.
And so yeah, I'm big fan of that. So yeah,
Cool.
those are the pure sound orchestral. And if you notice, if you ever get them, they're real pliable. Like
Right.
it's kind of hard to believe that they do what they're doing.
They kind of
So
stretch and
they're like,
flex a little
yeah,
bit.
they're like a rubber band almost. It's crazy. I
Cool.
would, they're
Okay.
like a rubber band that has no pullback. They're just, you
Interesting.
know, very floppy, and yeah, it's crazy.
It's like now that you're talking about that, just listening, just hearing that, particularly that Dallas Smith tune in my head, it sounds the way you're describing. It just, it's got an orchestral sound to it, and your kit is just, you know, sounds like it's vibrate. It's just shaking. You know, the whole
Yeah,
room.
yeah,
It's amazing.
that's exactly the thing. You know, it's like I don't know if anybody had the opportunity to see Buddy Rich before he passed away, but um, and Bonham has this too, the same thing. There's a violence to uh, a musical violence to the tone of their kits.
Yeah.
Um, there's a drum channel. I think it's a drum channel thing. It's called like Buddy Rich Up Close,
Okay.
and it was on DVD, and I don't know if it exists anymore. But what they did is he did this a pilot for a TV show that was going to be called the Buddy Rich Show, and this was shot in the late '70s, I think, or might, yeah, like '78, or I could be wrong. It might be 82, 1978 or 1982,
Okay.
and it's just him and his big band, and it's kind of him playing in a small nightclub. But what they did on this DVD, which is brilliant, is they did two separate mixes. They did a mix that was normal,
Yeah.
and then they did all of those same songs with Buddy about 25 dB hotter than everything else.
Really?
And it is the most rock and roll thing you'll ever see.
That's
It's
crazy.
so good.
Okay.
Like, and so that's that explosiveness that that I want. You know, I want the kid to kind of roar when I'm leaning into it. And but this Buddy Rich thing, man, it it'll blow your mind. He
Cool.
there's so many things that and I'd seen him live a few times as a kid, but hearing him, you know, and especially too, you know, if you've got a good subwoofer kind of situation going on at your house. He rides the kick drum a lot,
Right.
and you hear that for once, because a lot of these recordings, they're kind of like, they're only like a few mics. They're a couple of ribbon mics positioned out in front of the kit, and then the whole orchestra.
Yeah.
The big band. I mean, and so these subtleties you don't pick up, but this thing is so brilliant because you hear every little nuance to his playing, and you're gonna die when you see it.
Okay.
I'll try to find a link to it,
Sure.
because I don't know if any of these videos have been posted, but I'll send you a link to where you can buy it.
Okay.
And I have lent this DVD to a lot of drummers in this town, and I've had a few of them like over to my house just to like with the surround on stun,
Yeah.
just like, man, if you think Buddy Rich, holy shit.
Oh, okay.
This thing it's so good, man, and
Awesome.
so inspiring. Um, you know, um, I
Cool.
mean, of course, obviously the soloing is ridiculous, but what hits me more so, I started to see uh, a real link between him and Bonham in terms of like uh, internal groove
Okay.
almost,
Okay.
and
Yeah.
and like kind of a lyrical quality to the groove, like you know um I don't know if a lot of people hear that in terms of Bonham's playing, but it's always loping, it's always like it has a fluidity to it. uh
Hmm.
it's almost, there's always sort of a, regardless of if he's just playing 2 and 4, there's a loping thing that happens to it. In my opinion, that's the
Right.
way it hits me. It's almost more. There's something happening inside, and in the internal groove, and of course his sense of time is ridiculous anyway.
Yeah.
In all of its humanity, and that's the interesting thing too. Uh, that's something I spent a lot of time on. Is, I mean, you could play in time, but what's the internal part of it? Is it moving? Is it is there a is there something churning while that's all happening?
Right.
And I find that still one of the most intriguing things, about playing and working on, like
Yep.
just and that's the thing I love to pick up in with other players, like we were talking about Shannon earlier. That's
Hmm.
another guy that there's this beauty in his groove of um, I don't know. He can make it sound like there's more going on than there is,
Yeah.
and it all has to do with the feeling,
Right.
with
Totally.
where he's placing things, and even like his internal dynamics in eighth notes,
Hmm.
and that's he's another guy when it comes time to like do a fill or a flourish, it it takes you somewhere,
Yeah.
and the kit goes with it, and the sound of the kit goes with it, and that's really kind of the thing. It's in a lot of ways it's not a whole lot different than what you see guitar players stressing over in terms of like soloing tone, like,
Hmm.
and wanting to be able to solo uh, how the tone responds, how the amp responds when you're playing lighter. And then in that same solo, if you're going to play harder and louder, you want the amp to respond relative to that, and
Hmm.
you don't want it to get thin
Yeah.
or pinchy sounding or piercing. You want it all to move with you, and
Totally.
and back to just like the heads and the tuning thing. That's really what I'm looking for, man. Is that how the stuff responds to that? And
Right.
that's even, that even goes back to why, I'm using a a stick that's based off of a 2B model. It's a little even heavier than a 2B.
It's huge.
But yeah, but I find my hands are big, and I find that when I'm playing light, it just feels it sort of sits in my hands, and the bounce is there. And then of course when I really lay into the thing, the stick doesn't it doesn't fan out. It's still attached to the intent of where I'm wanting to put it.
Okay.
And so that's a lot of the sort of tone and the attack in my my drums are really that. It really has to do with what the stick is doing.
Right.
I want the point of attack to be bigger as opposed to just that single point. I almost want it to it's just a much fatter, longer note.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's I've got like 3 questions that just popped
Yeah,
up here,
maybe.
and one of them has to do with that. Are there certain kits that compress themselves when you lean into them?
Oh yeah. So like well, I don't want to offend anybody. I would be leery of anything that has anything that's thick shelled. You really have to be careful for. But although some thick shelled kits sound great, I would say like the Sonar Phonic series, and man, I'm going way back, and I don't know if anybody
That's fine. Bill's watching, and he's gonna love this.
Okay, cool. So like the era, the Phonic series that like what Phil Rudd played, those are phenomenal drums, but they have a cutoff point. You have to play inside of them.
Okay.
And it's more so to do with the toms and not the kick drum. Kits that really really respond well are obviously for me, my Maple Craviato kit, and I have a birch mahogany kit. There's birch on top and mahogany on the bottom.
Right.
That's another one that blows up really well. And then I have a set of 1968 Heyman drums.
Yep.
Those are phenomenal. Those will blow up like crazy.
Interesting.
They just don't. They never shut down. So the Gretsch 3-ply are not a drum that you can hit real hard. Those will shut down like crazy. Those are great in terms of like a and this is just my experience. Other people may have different, but those the round badge Gretches are, you kind of have to hit them in a certain area and then not exceed that velocity. A lot of modern drums shut down, quite honestly. And I don't know what that's about, and without kind of naming any kind of names, I'll just say this, I play what I play because they do blow up in that way. There's like a never-ending velocity point to the Craviato drums,
right?
And even the Heymans as well, what's a good example is a lot of the metal Gretsch snares, brass or even throughout the 70s and 80s. I don't know what they're like now, but those are not drums that you can hit very hard. They shut down to me quite a bit. Yeah, that's just my personal opinion, though. I don't want to try to. I'm not trying to hurt anybody,
Yeah.
But another drum that, I mean, man, any of the Superphonics are awesome.
Yeah.
Those are
can't go wrong.
You really can't. I would say the only thing better than the Superphonic is, I just got one of the Horse Link ferromanganese with the die-cast hoops and with the parallel strainer
Oh man.
and everything. And those are, it's insane. That drum is so great.
Awesome.
Yeah, it's phenomenal. I also got one of the TrueCast Dave Elitch drums too.
Yep.
That's another one that doesn't shut down. The Keplinger snares, they don't shut down. I've got a black iron. None of the Adrian Craviotto drums, the AK Craviotto drums, those are all real wide open. They give back whatever you put into them.
Awesome.
I also really like the 60s era Rogers are really good too. Those are really loud and you can really lean into those, whereas there are a lot of great Ludwig kits, the white paint on the inside era. Those are all real great, but I don't find that those will do what I want to do, And
Okay.
I've never, I've never had, Bonham mainly played maple interior stuff, and those are different. Those are a bit louder. Those actually sound better the harder you hit them.
Okay.
Find in a lighter setting, they don't really respond all that well. Again, that's a generalization, but overall, the white paint Ludwigs are kind of better to me in terms of tone, but they're not going to be like, they don't blow up real well. The Haymans are like a version of those on steroids, and that really, really, really open up. They have theirs has it's the vibrafibing, so it's kind of a painted on fiberglass that's on the inside of those.
Right. Okay.
Yeah, and but yeah, what other questions do you have?
Cool. Yeah, we're on an hour here, so I'm gonna fire these ones. One of them we might have to do a part 2 because this one of them gets into like a bunch of stuff that I kind of wanted to talk about. But this one is from Craig here. Hi Chris, I'm a huge fan. Loved your work from way back in the White Hart days. My son has Down syndrome, and whenever Rascal Flatts' Life is a Highway comes on, he starts dancing like crazy. Curious to know what your favorite Christian record you played on, and also your favorite country record you played on.
Oh man. So I would say, as far as the country thing, and it has more to do with kind of the maybe the nostalgia of it, and also song quality, is probably Keith's Golden Road record. Favorite Christian record I played on is probably the last White Hart record I did, which is the Freedom record. Yeah, so, but I mean, there's a lot in there. I do like Rich Mullins, the Ragamuffin Band record, and gosh, it's a good question. There's a lot in there. I actually played on a Matthew West record. It's got to be about 6-7 years ago, that I really like as well. I can't remember I'm terrible with titles.
Played on a few records too. So.
Yeah. It's hard to remember. Yeah. But that the Rascal Flatts record, I think they wound up putting Life is a Highway on it, which I think is the Me and My Gang record. That's a good one too. As far as like a good record to listen to in the country genre, that oh gosh, I'm not going to remember the title, so it doesn't matter. I'll remember this and I'll write it in an email, and you can post it somewhere.
Put it out there. I think we are going to have to do a part 2 though. I don't want to keep you much longer than your hour, but yeah, I think that would be awesome. There's that the other question has to do with consistency on a tour and stuff like that. So that's a long, that's that going a long way.
Yeah, that has a lot to do with Yeah, we need to do a part 2 because
Yeah.
I have some good experience with some different anybody who's ever suffered from like your hands or arms going numb. Uh, I've got great advice on that, and we should do a part 2 because
Okay.
and discuss these things. But
Sure. Yeah.
yeah,
I'm gonna write this down.
yeah. But
Um,
I'll send you some info on a few of the things that we talked about,
sure.
and maybe people can access it, through you and
Yeah. I'll
just
put it
some
in.
of these, yeah, some of these products and some of these records, just so
Yeah.
it's my. But I can get that to you later today.
That sounds great.
Yeah, man. But let's do a part 2 for sure.
Okay. That sounds great, man. Yeah. No, like I said, I appreciate you taking an hour today just to kind of shoot the shit and,
Yeah,
get into
you got
whatever
it.
we get into. I think there's a lot of great stuff that came out of this. So
Cool, man. Well,
hopefully.
my pleasure.
Yeah. All right. Well,
Uh,
I'm going to end the broadcast if you just want to hang on for a quick
Okay,
second.
you got it.
Um, thanks everybody for tuning in. We'll do a part 2 sometime in the next month or two. So
Cheers.